D. Watkins here on Salon TV, and today I'm joined by Bing Liu, director of Minding the Gap, which is nominated for a live-action documentary Oscar. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Thank you for coming in. Congrats on a eye-opening, truly brilliant project. How does it feel?
I'm just trying to make it normal, but it's not normal.
Yeah. Are you surprised with like all the success that's coming with the film? Obama's like calling his president friends, like, "Yo, you gotta know about this guy, Bing." You know.
Well, who was he calling? Bill Clinton?
I don't know. It was probably Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter, yeah.
Sent the text. Well,
Yeah.
Michelle is pretty cool with Bush, so maybe they got like a group text.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's pretty cool, I guess. Yeah. When I first started, it was just gonna be like the past projects I'd done, where it's like we premiered at some local setting and make some DVDs, maybe. You know,
Right.
so.
Yeah, I mean, but did you know that this many people was gonna fail it? Is it was just it's shocking, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a gradual uptick. I think the biggest thing was getting into Sundance, and then it's like, premiere U.S. festival, and from there on out, it was just the word sort of kept building, and then Hulu came on board, and it was like, okay, this thing is gonna get some eyes on it.
Yeah, if you just turned in, Minding the Gap is on Hulu right now. You can watch it, and I highly recommend it. How does it feel having so much of your life on film?
I guess a little weird when people come up to me in public and they're like, "Hey, are you that guy from Minding the Gap?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Other than that, it's like it doesn't really touch me that much because I mean, my friends and the people in my life, they still treat me the same, fortunately. So.
Do you still live in Illinois? You still in
I live in
Rockford,
Chicago. I've been in Chicago for 11 years. So okay. I was living in Chicago when I was making the film, actually.
Okay. So how many hours is it?
I never calculated the hours, but I shot for like 4 or 5 hours. For 5 years, sorry. I don't know if it's thousands. So a lot of it's reverse engineered. Like all that childhood stuff, I mean, a lot of it was shot by other people. And like, I went and I was like, "Hey, can you give me all of Zach and Kiera's footage that you have? There's two main guys there in the film." And they sort of did that work of just putting it all on the thumb drive. So it wasn't, you know what I mean? I wasn't like combing through stuff from my teenage years, really. I mean, it ended up being about 8 terabytes of footage that I shot. So.
And it's mainly about you three guys, you, Zach, and Kier. And how have those guys been responding to the film? And like, now everyone in the world and so many people knows their names.
Yeah, now it's, I mean, I think Kier's probably got the most love and fame out of all of us.
Is he Hollywood? Does he wear shades at night now?
Yeah, he's a little, he's not returning my calls. He blocked me on Insta. No, we still talk a lot. All three of us talk. But, he lives in Phoenix, and, people just recognize him so much because his face is just so, like synonymous with the film, and his story, I think, is just so powerful and inspiring.
It's all the storylines are just like the unexpected, but like, I don't want to give away too much. Like we want people to stream the film, and we want people to share it because the topics that you touch on are just, it's just the things that are right in front of us, but sometimes when you're living in those moments, it's kind of hard to pay attention to them, especially dealing with issues around masculinity. We think about Zach, and one day someone's like, they're your close friend, or it's a friend, and you grow up and you develop, regardless of, or based on whatever situations happen in your life, you grow and you respond in certain ways, and you just sometimes don't really expect your friends to turn into the people who they turn into, and it's just a part of their journey. How is it, from the, now that you get a chance to reflect, what do you think happened that caused you guys to go in different directions?
I mean, essentially, I think for Kier, the first time I ever really sat him down for an interview was that there's this moment in this film, in the first act, where, we, asked him, like, how are you disciplined when you're growing up? And he goes, well, nowadays they'd call it child abuse, but it's not really. He sort of trails off because he has this shame around talking about it. But that was a 2-hour conversation. We just he laid out everything that he felt about his father in that conversation. And what was important for me is that, you know, he's willing to open up about it and admit that he still feels a lot of pain and a lot of unresolved feelings from his childhood. I think for Zach, when I asked him about, you know, like, did he get disciplined when he was younger? And he was like, yeah, of course I got, you know, my dad beat my ass. You know, like, it was, like, he like was hiding that hurt. And I think that was true of a lot of the people that I talked to growing up. So, I mean, ultimately it came down to, you know, Kier's like just wants to and is self-aware of, you know, what he's been through, and he's willing to process emotions. I think that, and like for me too, like I felt like I went into some difficult places in the film, but I wanted to process my emotions. I think a lot of boys grow up and they're just, you know, they just bury it, and it's like, I'm just gonna move on, and I don't need to.
And that's what I mean.
Deal with it, you know?
When you're growing up in our society, that's kind of like the rules to the game. For a lot of young boys and young men in general, you're not supposed to sit down and be like, this hurt me. You know, you're supposed to wear these bruises and this pain like it's a badge of honor. And I think you guys do a great job at exposing that. But then different people, we respond to it in different ways, and that's what a brilliant piece comes in at.
I mean, everyone has their own truth, right? I mean, the film doesn't try to, and some people have complained about this, I think, like the film doesn't like leave you with some final universal tied together thought to leave you with to you know, go off and like learn your lesson. Like, I think, you know, the film presents just different truths, you know, and everyone is sort of living their own truth. And, you know, because of that, I think everybody was on board with the project once we finished it, all the people that participated. But I think I don't think there's some one grand like lesson to be taken away from this. Right. There's a lot of them, but I don't think there's one, you know.
So would you consider Rockford to be diverse, or is it segregated?
It's diverse but segregated. It's very
like most of America.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like Chicago, like, you know, most other places I've been to.
Yeah, but Chicago, like, you got to, you know, if you're downtown Chicago, you got to drive like 30 minutes to see black people. How was it in Rockford?
Well, if you're in downtown Rockford, nobody's around because it's, you know, it's like that classic Rust Belt sort of city where
a lot of people
it's gutted in the middle.
A lot of people aren't really familiar with that though. So like, take us like.
Yeah.
If you know, if you were like hired as a Rockford tour guide, you know, meet Bing, he's running the tour. Tell us about Rockford.
You know, you head in off the Interstate 90, which is the main interstate that is the artery for people coming in and out of Rockford. That interstate butts up right against the easternmost edge of Rockford. And so, you know, like on the east side near the highway, you see, you know, Target, Walmart, chain stores, like Best Buy, right? And then you go a little further, you start to get residential. It's a lot of old white working class people.
Are they like Trumpers or?
They can be. I mean, it's a city that's like right down the line. I think it's skewed towards Trump in 2016 by a little bit, but it's, you know, it's diverse in political beliefs too, which is interesting. But I'd say it was the more affluent white people live on that eastern side. And then as you go further in, that's where you get into downtown. That's where it's sort of like, you know, this gutted feeling of businesses closed down. A lot of big ornate houses, but they're, you know, sagging and the paint's chipping off.
Yeah, the population declined a lot.
Population declined.
Left, right? Yeah.
But like that's where the white working class and also some black working class, some Hispanic working class live. I think, you know, there's probably more Trump support around there. And then there's a river that divides the city into east and west. Once you cross that river, that's where you start to see a lot more black people.
Right.
So, and there wasn't a big Asian population there when my mom and I moved there when I was 8. But we moved all over. We lived in the deep west side when we first moved there. Then she married my white stepfather, and then we moved to the east side. So I was able to see a lot of different parts of Rockford growing up as a kid.
But you were able to just interact with so many different types of people through skating?
I mean, I can't, like, what are the public spaces today that you can think of that people gather in where they can, be around other people that are different from them without the purpose of actually doing that, right? I can think of like libraries maybe and
community college.
Yeah, in community college, and it's like, you know what I mean?
A community college.
No, totally. And I went to a community college, and so I totally get what you mean, because it's like, wow, it's like 50-year-old nurse, and then it's like this 25-year-old stoner.
There's an Asian DJ and a black guy with dreads.
It's like no, totally. That's the community college prom. Like that's. But the skate park was like that too. I mean, we like. I was hanging out with like 12-year-olds as an 18-year-old kid, and it was not abnormal.
And people don't talk about age diversity enough, but that's one of the biggest problems. Not to jump too far off topic, but with education, it's like sometimes younger people might learn better with older people. Some people learn better during the day. Some people learn better at night. Some people are kinesthetic. Some people are visual. Like we don't.
Right, so different learning styles. I mean, like we have this idea that this is just how you learn, and you grow up, and you memorize these things or whatever. But and then there's some lessons and some intelligence, just like there's more value than others. I mean, you go to any skate park in America and you see kids self-policing each other into a community. You see kids learning how to do something by intuition and by communal help, and that kind of work and that kind of learning just isn't valued. But I think it can be translatable, with the right support.
Yeah, there's so many lessons in the film, and one of the lessons that I took away or one of the things that I learned was just from the way that you show vulnerability in a way that it hasn't been seen in the generation before you. So you're a millennial, correct?
I'm 30. That's millennial?
That's a millennial. Yeah. So 30, but I know everyone talks about how young you look, man. They told me you were like 12, so you started. I
started doing pre-production in the womb, right? Started writing grants when I was a sperm.
So you're showing vulnerability in a way that's going to be transformative to Gen Xers and I don't know what's before Generation X, maybe like a baby boomer or something.
I think there's always there's always like a lost generation between the two, but I think it's baby boomers.
So I think that like that's going to be transformative, and people are going to be people who watch it are going to think about their own biases or the false ways they were taught. And the one way you did that was being very open about your own story. Was that difficult?
Not really. I mean, it became difficult once I actually did the interviews. But I think there was a little bit of, either naivety or, I don't know, maybe denial about like what I was actually doing. Mm-hmm. Like I thought I was going to go in and just get exposition. And even the way that I cut those scenes, before I brought on my co-editor, it was like a lot more like I'm just explaining to you what the filmmaker, like the filmmaker's history. So like, for example, that mom interview that's in the film, it ends up being a challenge in the final version. But when I first started cutting it, I was putting in things like, so mom, like, what do you think about me starting to skateboard? When did you get me, my first skateboard? It's like it wasn't confrontational. And when my editor came on board and he looked at the raw footage of that interview, and then he brought out like this portion of this 2-hour interview where I'm basically asking my mom, like, did you know what was going on at home, Mom? Like when you weren't around, what my stepfather was doing to me? Like I did not plan on sort of making it seem like a confrontation when I was doing it, and I didn't plan on even using it like that. I think that was when it became difficult, where I'm starting to realize like, oh, that's what this whole interview was about. And maybe it was just subconscious for me. And
do you feel like, is there like a way you can heal from that? From the art process, or just even from the process of just having that conversation with your mom in general?
Definitely a way. I mean, there's definitely, I'm not saying you have to go through like painful, confrontations with memory or with people that, were involved with pain you had experienced in the past in order to heal, but I think, you got to be prepared to do that. Mm-hmm. That's not always the way that you're going to heal. I mean, I started seeing a therapist while I was making the film, because I felt like I was being the therapist for everybody else. So like I needed someone to vent to. Eventually I got to a point where I showed my therapist a rough cut of the film.
Yeah.
And it was like, and this is before I decided to be in the film, so like none of my story was in it, but it helped me just like in a clinical setting almost talk about, those two other guys and like the things that they were sharing with me, and it helped me sort of, get some structural thinking around what they were going through so that I could tell their stories better.
At what point did you decide to be in the film? Because I couldn't imagine a film without you in there.
I know, it's hard because it's such a, the film at its heart is just one big inquisition, and it's like me trying to get answers. But, it wasn't until a year after Kira moves out of Rockford that I interviewed my mom, to give you a timeline. It was very late. But it came out of something that happens in the film where one of the characters tells me, something about another person, and it sort of changes everything. And I have to rethink what I'm doing, not only as a filmmaker, but like how am I influencing the situations that I'm filming. And I thought one way to do that was to show the audience, like this is where I come from. This is where I come from in terms of my household, and that's why I'm making these decisions as a filmmaker. And basically, pulling apart the fourth wall. That's how I thought about it.
It's a great decision because it worked, and like now it's nominated. So now you even get to dress and talk like a film snob. Like you can wear like sweaters in the summertime. You can get like a little monocle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Drink your tea.
I left them all in the green room. I didn't know I didn't know if that was kosher. So yeah.
So has that changed, or has that put more pressure on you as you gear up for your next project?
Oh yeah, my head is so big I can't fit through. Like I don't.
You gotta wear like all V-neck shirts.
Yeah,
now?
Exactly. Exactly. Growing out my man bun as we speak. No, I don't know. Luckily I started the project I'm finishing up right now before Minding the Gap came out, so there was less pressure. So like I was in. I don't know.
Can you talk about it? Is that a documentary?
Yeah, it's a documentary. It's about thematically, it's about confronting the past and your emotions in order to move forward with your life, as it pertains to these gun violence reduction programs in Chicago that are doing some of this community work. And then I have another one we're getting off the ground about millennial love and how millennials define it, how they enact it.
They define it through apps.
Well, that's my thing is, maybe. Maybe I'm in for like a very depressing time. You
go into the bar and you see someone you want to date, and you walk up to them and you say, "What's your username? Are you a Christian Mingle?"
Right? Yeah. Or J-date. What are we? Are you old enough? Yeah. Yeah.
Because I want to say some slick stuff to you once we log on.
I'm gonna adjust my bio. No, my thing is like how is the millennial generation confronting the same sort of issues and the same sort of like internal emotional work that needs to be done that relates to baby boomers, Gen Xers, basically every past generation.
Baby boomer, you get in a relationship with somebody and you stay with them for 50 years, even if you hate them. Even if you wake up every morning,
and that's a cycle. Like I think love happens in cycles. It could be a 50-year marriage, and like you go through the cycle, or it could be a 3-month fling.
Gen Xers get married and then they get divorced like after 40 years of marriage. Like they get divorced.
Yeah. So you're saying the divorce happens quicker as time goes along.
Yeah.
Like there's a relationship. There's an extrapolated. Okay.
Yeah, to death do us part means kids are grown and we're headed into like the retirement.
Yeah.
And then millennials, I have this figured out. Like I might have to.
Is it an 18-year period? It's just like as soon as out of high school.
Millennials stay in relationships for a month, and then it's over. Because there's too many apps, there's too many options. Like, think about it. Gen Xers and baby boomers, they couldn't meet a girl on Instagram and then, go to California. But millennials, they're meeting, my new girlfriend's from Alaska. We're going igloo shopping. You know what I'm saying? And then after 2 weeks, I'm not feeling Alaska. And then they go back to Chicago.
But I think that's unsustainable. And I think like that's, at some point, I think that's just a phase that millennials have the privilege of being able to have now. That's a phase that didn't exist in the past, but I still think that's a phase. And at some point, you're going to actually want to do a committed, serious relationship, and despite options, because you've had that experience of like, okay, well, like I can't be doing this forever. That's the part I'm interested in, I think. Yeah.
For a disclaimer, I'm not an expert.
Okay. No.
I just pulled these things from, but you are an expert filmmaker, and we are going to be showing a clip of Minding the Gap on Salon.com. But tell everyone where they can stream it right now.
You can stream it on Hulu, and it's also going to be broadcasting on POV this upcoming Monday, the 18th at 9 p.m. Eastern.
If you don't know Bing Liu, you should get to know him because, like, I'm gonna call this guy a genius in film, and I'm pretty sure he's been hearing it all week. And I don't think he has a big head. He's extremely humble, and the film is great. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.